Greetings! Anton here with a mid-update devlog for hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. Hope you're all doing well. I just had an excellent time last week at GDC. Excellent but tiring, as week-long convention events like that tend to be. Got to see a whole bunch of really incredible and exciting VR-related things, a couple of which I wanted to share with you folk, just to get you hyped. I don't know if any of you have seen the various sorts of eye tracking experiments that have been being done with the headset. I think one was posted to our Vive just before GDC by Toby, but I actually got to try their demos, and it was... Have you ever tried a feature out where within less than a minute of trying it out, you're almost angry that you don't have it already? That was what getting eye tracking in VR was like. They had a couple different demos. You could see yourself as another character with and without eye tracking. You could manipulate interfaces with your eyes, which honestly I think is like the least exciting of all the things you can do with it. And they had this great little demo with this magic rock, basically, that you could throw at targets. But if you were looking at the target, the rock would always basically strike what you had thrown it at. But what was so fascinating is that even though you knew trickery was involved, it still felt like you were responsible for that throw. So I think there's a whole bunch of cool stuff that is going to be possible beyond all of the performance benefits of foveated rendering and things like that. Once we get this stuff stock, I want a dev kit so bad. Other cool stuff was I don't know if any of you have seen Striker VR does this gun controller they're working on. It's not for consumer stuff at the moment, from what I've seen. It's mainly for arcade VR, but it's got some punch. It actually has linear recoil in it. Awesome ergonomics. I hung around their booth a whole bunch during the week just to play with the thing, because it felt great, and apparently they can actually dial up the recoil impulse of it quite significantly. So not something you or I are gonna necessarily have in our living room right now, but we all know how this stuff advances. Gets more advanced and gets cheaper. So I still wanted one though. Let's see what else. Oh, I got to try out. I hope some of you have seen some video of this on Twitter and such. Servios was showing off a new demo game called Sprint Vector. That was I would describe it as almost like, I don't know, like Tron cyber race skating. You sort of glide. You've got momentum. You sort of glide along the ground. It's a fast-moving game. Honestly, I wouldn't have thought that a fast platformer or platformer race game would be something that could work in VR, just in terms of like having the inertia be convincing and really enjoyable. But I had a blast playing it, and there was something about the constancy of motion in it that made it. I didn't feel the slightest bit of discomfort playing it, and so kudos to them for getting a sort of physics-based locomotion controller already that feels so tuned. And then lastly, I got to stop by the Upload VR offices in SF and got to play around in their new. They've got a relatively new mixed reality room, and I've never gotten to try doing that before. Obviously it doesn't really feel any different when you're in headset and playing it, but being able to look back at the footage and see yourself residing, especially for me, being able to be like, I've been looking at these levels and these spaces now, in certain cases, for almost a year. And so it's so cool to see myself standing in them from a completely different perspective than what I'm used to. And just got some great footage out of it. Once we get some more game modes in, I'm totally gonna go back there, and we're gonna shoot a much more tight trailer, because it's just such a fun way to play with a medium. So enough about GDC. What's going on with H3 at the moment? What am I working on? Well, the big project right now, which I've been wanting to get back to for a while, and have finally ripped off the Band-Aid with it, because it's like pure infrastructure programming, is doing justice to the concept of the modular range scene. Like, obviously, the scene's in there now. It's a cool space, but there's like 12 sequences. It's basically one target type. It was a fine prototype, but isn't what I had wanted to really do, which was something that was closer to a reimagining of my favorite light gun game. Well, not favorite, one of my favorites, because Time Crisis 2 is my favorite. One of my favorites, Police Trainer, which, if you haven't played it, is essentially the sequence of exercises at varying difficulty levels. There are things about hitting static targets, moving targets, timing-based challenges, etc. But something far more expansive than that, with a lot more exercises and target types. And so, along that lines, how to put it, the first version of it from a code-based standpoint was not salvageable. And that has everything to do with the fact that I coded it quickly. Like, that was back when I was doing an update a week, so it was done very, very fast. And it was like about 9 months ago. And when you've been working on a project like this, especially someone like myself who has done most of my programming learning through doing projects like this, I look at 9-month-old code and I'm like, embarrassed. And so I've started from scratch, actually making a modular system. Because basically what I did with the version that's in the game right now is I almost immediately coded myself into a corner, in that I was sort of developing a sequencer and a way of defining waves and defining sequences. And what ended up happening is that I polluted my code with a bunch of things specific to one target type, which immediately made it almost impossible to extend it to other modes, other target types, other behaviors. So I'm doing it again and doing it correctly. I'm forcing myself to actually implement 5 completely different types of target spawning and movement behavior and such before I get to the fun visual side of things, just to make sure that I haven't messed something up and sort of broken the extensibility that I want out of the system. So that's the big thing that I am, that I'm working on. The other side of it that I'm getting some much needed help from a colleague of mine, Arthur, is building a set of bespoke tools inside Unity for making these sequences. Because that was the other side of why there's only 12 sequences in the current modular range, is that the way that I had to define them and set it up and drag things around was so cumbersome and bug prone and time consuming that it was not an effective way to author a ton of content. And it's a tool like this for doing a sequence. I should be able to rough out an entire sequence in a couple minutes, and then refine it and test it from there. It shouldn't be the sort of thing that it takes hours to make one of them. And if it's taking that long, it's as much a failure of the tool and the design process as anything else. So I'm trying to fix that, because the big point of all of this mode is to also cover what I think has been a sort of a felt need, a request by a number of folks in the community, which is to have a mode that has some sort of persistence or progression in it, so that you start in a place and you do challenges and you unlock new challenges and new firearms over the course of that. So the way that I'm envisioning the modular range working, which it's going to have a new name too, still figuring that out, working, is that sequences will be broken down by equipment restriction. So there will be sequences that are just open, so you can just grab anything you want out of the item spawner, put it together, do that sequence. And then there'll be more focused ones that are about, say, there'll be one where everything is designed basically for guns with six rounds in them, or 6 to 8 or so. There'll be sequences that are just built around pump shotguns. There'll be sequences that are just built around automatic weapons that aren't so much about accuracy, but sort of controlled spray in an area. And there'll be sort of more exotic ones. I'm still figuring out how I want to define it, but there'll probably be some 3-gun setup in this, so that you'll basically choose a handgun a carbine and a shotgun, and there will be specific targets that pop up, probably center, left, and right, that you have to utilize the correct firearm on. That's a little harder to figure out the logic for, but it's in my to-do list. But yeah, so the goal is to be able to create a volume of enjoyable content that's structured in a progression, all with leaderboards, all with a more nuanced scoring system, so that there's a little more distance between folk, and that really rewards both precision and economy of time. So, and we're probably going to be using the Steam APIs for that, so that should be cleaner to expand. So yeah, that's what I'm working on now, and I'm still on the fence about whether I'm going to have just a super rough version of this sequencer in the next update. It'll be entirely based on how much progress I make over the weekend and into next week. Because I'd love to give you guys a preview of at least what a bunch of the target behavior is going to be like. I've got 12 distinct types planned on paper, and then there's a bunch of subtypes for them. So in the case of, like, say, the blue discs that are currently in the modular range, instead of it just being, say, blue discs or no-shoot discs, there'll be bullseyes, there'll be ones where it's positive scoring in the center, negative scoring around the edge. There'll be armored discs that require repeated hits. And so yeah, so there's going to be a lot of subtle nuance, and I would say that some of the modes are almost going to be puzzle-like. So it may be that you have to strike targets in a certain order. There'll be certain ones that are about appraising a situation rapidly and then reacting to it. So yeah, I guess that's the thing that I'm most interested in trying to bring to, from a design standpoint, bring to these sorts of structured shooting challenges, is not just have them in the, like, oh, things pop up and I shoot everything that pops up, but actually integrating interesting cognitive exercises in them, so that something happens, you have to appraise the field, figure out what you're supposed to do, and rapidly react to it as fast as possible accurately, because I think that's far more interesting, and it's a wider sort of challenge. So, well, I think I'll stop rambling for now, as I've got a whole bunch more. As I said, just it's if you do Unity stuff, I'm up to here in scriptable objects right now. It's dozens of them at this point, just defining tons of data and then defining how it all gets slung together into one super extensible sequencing system. But it's going well, and I'll have something cool to show you all next week. Peace.